Let me give a little bit of background related to this. GrantsCast is probably one of the rare podcasts for grants calls or issues related to grants. Last week, we've been together with David on a meeting in Belgrade, and actually, I figured out that we have really some common way of thinking related to grants. And then I said, okay, let's talk. The idea of this episode is to explore how development financing is changing and what organization must do in order to stay tuned, stay sustainable, and especially continue to get funding. I would like to ask David to introduce shortly himself and especially his experience related to grants and development assistance.
Thank you, Zoran, and audience. I'm very happy to be with you. It was a great pleasure meeting you last week during our regional network meeting for all the institutional partnership developers in Eastern Europe that we spent in Belgrade together. And as you say, we have been also thinking about our business. I am in this role here at SOS Children's Villages International now in my 20th year. Since around 10 years, I'm leading the institutional partnership development work. And as such, we have been developing and supervising, let's say, the development of around 8,000 projects in development cooperation over the last 10 years. And we are very excited to see what's coming next.
Tell me, one of the first things we were discussing last week was your opinion and or your view that in this changing environment in the area of development assistance, that you have said that traditional grants are dying, or also that they will be evolving in next period of time. What would you say about this?
Yes, Johanna, thank you for this nice quote. I was actually saying, yes, grants are dying. At the end of the day, what are grants? Grants is one way of supporting development assistance or international development work for innovation. A small percentage of the overall official development assistance budget goes to civil society, around 10% overall average. And these 10% are used to identify new ways of doing development cooperation. The innovative power of civil society enthusiasts, these are mostly young people who are dreaming of a better world, is being fueled by grants. And these grants have shown also to have a disadvantage because they are also, of course, they can be industrially exploited. We can organize a whole industry around grant seeking, and this is a little bit impeding the innovative power. So I do think, and we have many signals, that the budgets for development aid is shrinking. The way of delivering these aid is changing. So it is certainly not a good advice to continue organizing civil society solely around grant seeking. We need to think in a different manner how we can use the qualifications and the skills that we have for grants management for another way of project management. And this is coming up, and this will be very exciting to explore this together now.
I'd like to ask you, based on your answer, is that in which direction we can expect that, let's say, development assistance would go? What would be next? What to expect for organizations to be prepared to face with what would soon happen?
One element is always what is the focus of aid. Since 2011, when we had Istanbul principles in place at the alternative high-level meeting of civil society in Busan, it was all about aid effectiveness. So how can we do things with better effect? Not so much efficiency, but effect. How can we really have the strongest effect? So we have defined some principles around aid effectiveness. And this was around maybe 10 years, the discussion as it went. And in the last 3 to 5 years, I would say, really after the pandemic, I have a feeling as if scale is becoming really the next big topic. After relevance and effectivity, scale. And also it is often said impact. So I think scale and impact are the main new focus areas around development and what civil society can do to better scale their operation and to create a larger impact instead of growing a bigger organization. I think this is a key question that we have to explore.
You were mentioning blended funding. Do you think that, let's say, blended funding would be appropriate funding model for NGOs?
Yeah, Zoran, at the end of the day, I think yes. We are already quite used to working in a blended manner because we are always asked to bring own funds on the table. So we are bringing money which normally is donated for charitable purposes, and this is our own contribution. And the government agencies are giving us, if we are European agencies, 25%. They ask 25 of own funds, so they give us on €1, they give us €3. Since the localization agenda has taken more shape, thanks to the discussion about scale, it's also about how can local actors better benefit. And that's already since 10 years or even more, European Commission has started to give more money to actors which come from third states. So they will only ask €1 on a €10 budget. So they give them 9 times more. If you're not an EU resident agency, they give you 9 times more because it's more difficult to raise the free funds on one hand, and on the other hand, because it will favor external actors to operate locally and create a bigger impact. So we are used to mixing different streams of funds, and now the next level will be blending private investments with non-returnable grants. That is a bigger question, and this will really put our brains somehow under stress because we can hardly imagine how we can actually do our work and create financial value.
I would like to maybe to return back first on impact. I've been witnessing many non-profit organizations are in process of developing their capacity to assess impact, to prove to governments or to donors that they've been doing some impact. Let's say in the countries like Macedonia, Serbia, Ukraine, sometimes it's really hard to convince government partners working with children, working with target groups in crisis. Sometimes it is really difficult because the only things that governments understand in this level of development is that let's have infrastructure, roads, have infrastructure, and not even think about social issues. And then if we need to prove to our donors that we are so impactful with the money they gave us, sometimes it's really hard to function in societies where for change and impact, especially governments understand something else, not especially change in the life of people. I think that this might be sometimes challenging.
You're touching upon the biggest challenge that we have because our work in development cooperation, the Paris Declaration, Accra Agenda, all the different agreements actually say that our projects as civil society are contributing to the larger, formerly Millennium Development Goals, now Sustainable Development Goals, which means we are contributing to the impact on society, economy, and everything that moves humans. So we are creating impact, but we are not the one. I don't have one impact in my project. I will contribute to a larger impact. So the project remains at a level which is really under our control, and our mission is to do whatever we do. Some are in ecological development, some are in social development, particularly for children and mothers. Others are working on many other topics, maybe for people with special needs. And here they are contributing to the impact where it all comes together. And that really biggest shift is from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals, that everybody is expecting the economic circles to also play a bigger role. So economic value creation is now on top of the agenda. And we are coming almost back to the 1970s, as you said, building roads and infrastructures, bridges and power stations. This was in the past the way of doing development aid. Now, with the new agendas that the big donor agencies are actually driving, like the Global Gateway, European Commission, it also says and speaks about civil society and official development assistance money should prepare the way for commercial investments. And we are only a small part as civil society, because mainly it's about official development assistance will only be disbursed when it also supports investments. And that is really a new paradigm for us.
Thank you for bringing this. But let's say if one organization in the moment relies on 100% on grants, really often we can see that in civil society, unfortunately. What will be the first 3 steps towards genuine sustainability?
Yeah.
Especially having in mind new trends that preparing this field and environment for investments.
I can remember that in 2015 was the first time when I felt this shift realizing. In the Netherlands, there was the end of a big program which was called like the second grant scheme of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they selected very big projects. Now we were working on civic-driven change. So that were projects abroad where we are inciting the civil society to actually take the change and the future in their own hands. During these programs from 11 to 15, we learned that civic-driven change comes a lot with social economy and social enterprises. Social businesses, small-scale mills, small-scale power station were actually providing jobs to people who are coming from rural areas, who are prone to move to the urban centers, and who are contributing to a depopulation of the countries and a concentration of population in cities, which is always, or very many times, not turning out to be the realization of the big dream. Sometimes people are caught in debt and poverty and living on the street, and they find themselves exposed to human trafficking, to drug, illegal crimes, and illegal kind of business and criminal activities. And it fuels all kind of movements that especially 2015, 2016 in Europe, we have felt a big migratory pressure of a totally new dimension. All of this comes together and is shaping that we want to create a good outlook for the future in country, on the ground for every person. So I think the idea of social entrepreneurship will help us understand how can we, as a civil society organization, play a role instead of doing the work that we are used to do to create impact. How can we support local people doing that work on their own idea to create that impact? And this is difficult for us. How will we not be paid ourselves, but facilitate economic cycles where people can be paid for themselves and we are being paid to organize that link? It's a challenge, for sure. If we don't take it up, we will disappear. If we are today depending on 90% grant funding, we are going to disappear if we don't adapt. That is for sure.
In different stages of development, those that serve as intermediaries can find innovative ways how to secure their funding, because as an intermediary you don't have product, but you have, or even mission-driven service providers that works with specific groups like SOS is doing, how to define ways to secure mission-driven activities, but also to sustain themselves. And this is always a challenge, especially when funding is secured by international development aid. And this is probably interesting to explore how we can use approaches of impact investments or social investments in order to really secure our existence, but also to secure the future of our target groups. This is definitely something that we have to employ a lot of social investments.
Yeah, so what I can say here is, of course, true. Official development assistance is fueling, the budget for that, saying that goes to civil society is approximately 18 billion euros every year, right? 18, 16, 18, 10% of the overall until 2024. Now in 2025, it starts to be around a third less, or even more will be lost because the USA have stopped their agency. Many European countries are also shifting a lot of budget from development aid abroad towards managing the effect of migration inside the country. And mainly also we are investing more and more in the military right now. So there are some priorities which are shifting. Of course, fueling 18 billion into civil society is, of course, providing jobs. And these are beautiful jobs for young people who are dreaming of a better world, and they make their experiences after 5 to 10 years, they can become elements of the economy because they have experience abroad, they know how to manage larger projects with a lot of money. This is a very good school for the real world. But at the same time, we have become, or many of our organizations have become, really big economic enterprises. We are big enterprises and contributing to the play of cat and mouse between capital for development aid and our projects, and we are delivering. So we have become almost project shitting factories. And this is something we have to really review. We have to think about it. We are not here to make projects, we're here to make impact. So thinking about our mission first, identifying the interventions where we can reach, as a SOS Children's Villages, most children and families and young people at the same time, will help us to be the compass for our future interventions.
Thank you for bringing this perspective. Until a week ago, I didn't have it, and because of that, I wanted to have you in our podcast. I hope that the people that will see and watch will think about starting to change. What is your opinion? What have to change in order to this transition to happen? You were mentioning this constant cat and mouse chase that is happening between donors and grantees. If you, as a head of IPD of SOS, what you will do, what would be, let's say, the first things that needs to be done in order to probably negotiate with donors, but also negotiate internally with managers, key decision makers, in order this change to start happening?
What we have to, the advantage that organizations like we have a dozen of very big NGOs in the world who are really working on different fields, but even we have 6 big organizations working on child rights. It doesn't mean that there will be only 2 left. I do think that every one of these 6 have around 4,000 local presence in the world. That is 24,000 local communities which we can give direct access. It means we can be route to market for social enterprises. Let's say we're talking about maternal health. A local community-driven health insurance, which will just make sure that everybody knows about the vaccines, everybody knows about the medical services that they can get, and with small contribution creates also the funding opportunity for having a health insurance. We can serve 24,000 communities together. 24,000 communities, and the community can have 100,000 people. So we already see how scale works. This is interesting because these are people who are part of the bottom billion, as we also say. They are not bankable. They don't have a bank account, they don't have an insurance, they don't have an ID, and everybody knows SOS Children's Villages, CARE, PLAN, Save the Children, all of us, and World Vision, we are very strong in creating the opportunity for people to have their ID secured, to have their health insurance, what the state provides, insured when it doesn't exist. We can even set up village saving and loan. We can set up local health insurance. So all of this we can do. Very interesting for the large insurance company in the world to actually borrow us the money, bet that we can do that, and then we are going to start small, also on the micro level, but in a large scale, small insurance companies, and everybody knows a good insurer can actually manage the risk in such a way that they don't lose out, but that they make a small profit. And this will help the industry of insurances, for example, to also have 1 billion new clients. It's for sure that we can receive pay for that, because what we are doing then is technical assistance, route to market, to the bottom billion. I think this is really one key that we can start in the negotiations.
I like your examples. I had this impression while we were working last week in Belgrade that really we have to go out of the box and then to really think about how market function and what we can do as new innovative approaches to help and to support our mission. We were also discussing the way how new technologies, artificial intelligence, let's say prompt engineering, is changing our profession of grant writing experts. What would be results of, let's say, rely on or using this? Because many people are starting using AI in writing proposals, or even not only in writing proposals, but also supporting entire project cycle management cycle.
Yeah, here we are touching, of course, upon something which is hitting us like a train, and we are in the tunnel. We can hear some noise. We don't really know what is this, but actually something is coming, and we are going to be surprised. I do think it's gonna be a train now, and if we don't get out of the way, it's gonna end in a massacre. So I think that artificial intelligence, for example, and such new technologies, they can be a very useful tool for us to win the cat and mouse game. But if the cat is eating all the mice, the cat will have a real problem after a while. So I'm sure that the mouse population will adapt themselves, and that the grants as delivering official development assistance, this is why they will disappear, because we can crack the system very easily. By writing up your stuff with artificial intelligence, it becomes quite good. It could also be detected by artificial intelligence that it has been written by artificial, but if we mix it up with our normal participatory approaches, if we do the whole process, then we become really uncrackable, and I think we can actually win that game. But it is not the objective to win the game, is to play the game as long as possible and to create as much fun in the game, for us its impact, as we possibly can. So that is why I believe we have to use artificial intelligence on one hand, but it cannot replace our interhuman interaction with the people, which actually they are defining their future. Then we can use AI to make it more digestible and adapt it to the donor guidelines. But this is why I think grants as such, call for proposals, they are going to be less and less available for us, and they will be mixed with the need to find private investors who also believe into our story. And that is already decided. This is really happening. So AI is just a tool. It will not replace us. If we don't use it, it will cost our jobs, that's for sure. So let's use it and make it good use. But it's not about using it only for grants. It's also how can we actually make relevant interventions that create so much value that an investor can actually be paid for giving us the capital to do it. And that is something AI will not help us to solve. We will have to find this by ourselves.
Your position is head of institutional partnership development. Why this wording instead of, let's say, head of grants and funding? Can you explain this to me, and maybe what is the concept behind?
Yeah, it was really interesting when we started to develop this field of work for our organization, SOS Children's Villages. We were called public funding. So it means really funding. And now we spoke with our colleagues left and right in the UK, in America, and in Germany and everywhere. And it was also, some people said public funding is getting funds from the general public. The general public. This is again appeals and charitable donations. So that is why we said we are going to follow actually the idea of the donor agencies, which since the Paris Declaration were actually working in partnerships. And partnership means the relation is not you give me money, I give you impact, but the relation is together. We are creating the impact that is needed in order to reach our goals together. By the time the Millennium Development Goals, now the Sustainable Development Goals, but this is a partnership, it's a dialogue. We are proposing something which corresponds to the priorities of the society in which we live. The Austrian, the German, every agency has their priority countries because it depends a little bit how our general public, who is the electorate and fills the parliament, is also voting. Yeah. And then we are making a project, and afterwards we're giving feedback. We are actually telling the agencies what works better and what works not so well. And one of the dialogues that we had as an industry, civil society, gave the feedback. We are very successful when we make projects which are locally driven and have a social entrepreneurial aspect. Like village saving and loan associations are super successful They're incredibly successful. With a small input, after 3-4 years, small groups of women who have maybe 50,000 in their environment, 50,000 people around them, they can raise a capital of €1/3 They have then a bank of €1/3 And we all know banks do actually play a very big role in economic and social progress because they can borrow to those that they trust. And who could be better placed to judge the trust into the local community than if it was not the people from the local community? So when we are helping setting this up in such a way that is a little bit limiting the risk, this is how we can create scale. And this is why we call ourselves partnership developers, because we are developing and deepening the partnership with institutions. An institution is not a person. An institution, like our company, if I die tomorrow, somebody else can take my place and fulfill my work. It means independent from the individual. We are not looking for heroes. We are looking for strong policy and institution. And that makes it reliable for the millions of people that we serve, that our organization is stronger than an individual and can actually continue to serve this work when the people change. The ministers are changing every 5 years or even quicker. So this is why institutional partnership development to be really the backbone of long-term and sustainable work.
Do you have this feeling that, let's say, when you establish communication with, let's say, some of the European donors, that this institutional partnership development is functioning? Let's say when we applied for some call for European Commission, do you have this, let's say, feeling that this is functioning?
Yeah.
Knowing their bureaucratic procedures and everything?
No, genuinely, I have this feeling, and despite all the bureaucracy, which is of course making the human factor very small, I think the partnership is very much driven by the human factor, and it is starting with interaction. If we make the effort and move close to our donor agencies, if we go to the receptions at the embassies, if we go to the different cultural activities and also political activities that they are offering, or social activities, we leave our name on their list. We are in their list. We are appreciating their effort. Every worker, even in the embassy, is happy when his event has a lot of attraction. We are putting our name on their list. They find it, they invite us more. We go there. That doesn't cost a lot of effort. We don't even have to do much there. Just be part of the circle and the conversation. And as it happens, then we will be showing our work. And as it happens, the agency will have to do something in this area to improve the well-being of people or to support the economic development, because we have, for example, some machines that we want to export there. So I think as a social actor, we can really inform the donor agency about the shape that the next project should take and that it works, because we are receiving the contracts after we do this interaction. If we don't do the interaction, they don't know us, we win nothing. Yeah, so I think it works.
Super, thank you. What would be your advice for civil society, but even public institutions, if you want, or social enterprises related to sustainability or other new funding that will be available for them in the future?
Yeah, so if we're looking at these three actors here, we have really some recommendations that we can make after several years. Since almost 8 years, we are working with social enterprises and trying it out ourselves. Civil society. We are very much used to working with people like USAID, United Nations, European Union, and very complicated donors. We have too much red tape in our systems. Before we can engage, we have to do too many things, and we have to learn to be also able to be entrepreneurial. Because when we are working with social enterprises, these are startups. They don't have much patience. They don't have much time. They actually sometimes consider us as their lifeline. And this is maybe one of the first things we have to be very careful about. We can probably not be the lifeline of one startup. We can be one of three such elements of hope, but we must make that very clear to them. And we need to also be sure that we are not afraid of giving up our market share, because it's a different market what the social enterprise will serve. We are always afraid to lose market share, fundraising revenue, and the enterprise is always sometimes putting too much hope into us as a unique actor. And the institutions, we need to advocate in institutions and institutional guidelines, for example, that social enterprises will have the status that they deserve, because they are a little bit less competitive than a commercial enterprise, because they are trying to integrate people who come from our sphere of target group. So they are sometimes vulnerable, they have some disadvantages, which the social enterprise turns into an advantage, and we should advocate for them to have the right regulatory framework. So these three actors have three agendas to fulfill in order to have a common success.
To make your closing statement, please continue the sentence. The future belongs to organizations that, and please continue.
Thank you, Zoran. I think the future belongs to organizations that are actually allowing their employees to experiment with innovation. This is the key.
Thank you. That was a conversation with David Katzlinger. So many things are happening in the field of grants, and hope that with this episode you have learned in which direction you have to transform in near future if you want to deal or still deal with financial support or grants as one of the mechanisms. Thank you very much, and see you next Tuesday. Bye.